Jake Morrison wiped the sweat from his forehead as he walked along the empty beach in North Carolina. The sun was getting hot, and his metal detector had been beeping all morning at nothing but bottle caps and old coins. He was getting tired of digging holes in the sand for junk. His job as a marine archaeologist was usually more exciting than this, but today felt like a waste of time. The detector made a different sound suddenly, and Jake stopped walking. This beep was deeper and longer than the others. He had been doing this work for 10 years and knew when something was different. He marked the spot with a small flag and started digging. The sand was soft and easy to move, but he had to go deeper. The unusual dot 3 feet down his shovel hit something hard. Jake brushed away the sand carefully with his hands and saw metal. It was not rusty like old cans or smooth like modern trash. This metal looked strange and seemed to change color when he moved his head. Sometimes it looked silver and sometimes it looked blue or green. The surface had symbols carved into it that he had never seen before. Jake dug around the object until he could see it was a box about the size of a laptop computer. The metal felt warm to the touch even though it had been buried in cool sand. When he lifted it out of the hole, the symbols began to glow with a soft light. Jake had found many old things in his career, but nothing like this. He set the box down on the sand and took out his phone to call his partner, Lisa Grant. She was a marine biologist who worked with him on research projects. Before he could dial her number, something incredible happened. A voice came from the box. Not from speakers or any opening he could see. The voice seemed to come from the metal itself. The voice was weak and sounded far away, but Jake could hear it clearly. It was speaking English and sounded like a man who was very tired or hurt. The voice said slowly, "Please do not open this box," and then it said, "For the love of all that is sacred, do not open this box." Jake dropped his phone in the sand and stared at the box. The glowing symbols were pulsing now like a heartbeat. He had never experienced anything like this in his life. He was a scientist and believed in facts and evidence, but this was beyond anything he had studied. The voice came again, but quieter this time. It said, "Please," and then went silent. Jake picked up his phone and called Lisa. She answered on the second ring, and he could hear the sound of boat engines in the background. She was probably out on the research vessel collecting water samples. Jake tried to keep his voice calm as he told her what he had found. Lisa laughed at first and said he was playing a joke on her. When Jake insisted he was serious, she said she would come to shore right away. While he waited for Lisa, Jake examined the box more closely. The metal was unlike anything he had ever seen. It was not aluminum or steel or any alloy he knew. The symbols were carved deep into the surface and seemed to go all the way through the metal. When he touched one of the symbols, it felt warm and the glow got brighter. The whole box seemed to be alive somehow. Jake tried to find a way to open the box, but there was no visible latch or hinge. The sides fit together perfectly with no gaps or seams. It was like the box had been made from a single piece of metal that had been shaped around whatever was inside. Jake wondered what could be in there and who had made it. The voice had sounded human, but the technology was beyond anything he knew existed. Lisa arrived 30 minutes later, driving her Jeep across the sand. She was wearing her wetsuit and had salt water in her hair from diving. Lisa was always practical and down to earth, which made her a good partner for archaeological work. She looked at the box sitting on the sand and raised her eyebrows. "This is your big discovery," she said. "It looks like some kind of art project or maybe a prop from a movie." Jake shook his head and told her to just watch and listen. He touched one of the symbols and the box began to glow again. Lisa stopped smiling and knelt down next to the box. The voice came again, and this time it was stronger. It said, "I know you can hear me," and then, "Please listen carefully because I do not have much time." Lisa grabbed Jake's arm and stared at the box with wide eyes. The voice continued, "My name is Captain Ryan Webb and I am speaking to you from inside this container." Lisa started to say something, but Jake held up his hand to keep her quiet. The voice went on, "I know this is hard to believe, but I am trapped in here by technology you do not understand yet." The voice paused and then said, "I was sent back in time to prevent a terrible mistake that will destroy everything." Jake and Lisa looked at each other. This was impossible, but they were both hearing it. The voice sounded completely human and sincere. There was fear in it and desperation. Captain Webb continued, "The year where I come from is 2387 and humanity is fighting for survival against something called the Devourers." The box suddenly got much brighter, and both Jake and Lisa had to shield their eyes. Their cell phones started making strange noises, and the metal detector was beeping wildly even though Jake had turned it off. Lisa's diving watch stopped working and Jake's camera would not turn on. Whatever was in the box was affecting all their electronic equipment. Captain Webb's voice became urgent. He said, "You must not open this box no matter what happens, and then, inside this container is a weapon that could save humanity, but it could also destroy everything we are." The voice was getting weaker again, like a radio signal fading. Webb said, "Take this box somewhere safe and protected, and then find others who can help you understand what you are dealing with." The glowing stopped, and the voice went silent. Jake and Lisa sat in the sand staring at the box. It looked ordinary now, except for the strange metal and the symbols. Jake reached out to touch it again, but Lisa grabbed his wrist. She said they needed to be very careful about what they did. Next. Jake agreed, and they carefully lifted the box and put it in the back of Lisa's Jeep. As they drove toward their research facility, Lisa said she knew someone who might be able to help them understand what they had found. Jake hoped she was right, because he had a feeling their lives had just changed forever. The underwater research station was built on a platform 2 miles from the North Carolina coast. Jake and Lisa arrived there just as the sun was setting and the ocean was turning dark blue. The facility had everything they needed to study unusual objects safely, including clean rooms and isolation chambers. Jake carried the box carefully while Lisa opened the security doors with her keycard. Amy Stone was waiting for them in the main laboratory. She was a linguistics expert who worked with the university and had helped Jake translate ancient symbols before. Amy was in her 50s with gray hair and sharp eyes that missed nothing. She had been studying languages for 30 years and could read scripts that most people had never heard of. Ben Clark was also there working on some computer equipment. He was the tech specialist who kept all the research station's systems running. Ben was young and energetic and loved solving puzzles with electronics. He had studied engineering and computer science and could fix almost anything that used electricity or circuits. Lisa had called both of them on the way to the station and told them to come immediately. She had not explained what they found, but said it was the most important discovery of their careers. Amy and Ben were curious and excited to see what had Jake and Lisa so worked up. Jake placed the box on a metal table in the center of the lab. The room had bright lights and clean white walls that made everything look very scientific. The box looked even stranger here than it had on the beach. The metal surface reflected the lights in ways that normal metal would not. Amy leaned close to examine the symbols while Ben started setting up cameras and recording equipment. "I have never seen writing like this," Amy said as she studied the carved symbols. "These are not from any human language I know about." She took photos of each symbol from different angles. "The style is completely unique, and the depth of the carving suggests they were made with very advanced tools." Ben finished connecting his equipment and nodded to Jake. "Go ahead and try to make it work again," he said. Jake hesitated for a moment, then reached out and touched one of the symbols. The box immediately began to glow, and the voice of Captain Ryan Webb filled the room. "I can sense that you have brought me to a better location," Webb said. His voice was much clearer now and sounded stronger than it had on the beach. "The electromagnetic interference here is lower, and I can maintain communication more easily." Amy dropped her camera and stared at the box. Ben's mouth fell open and he started checking his recording equipment to make sure it was working. The voice continued, "I know you have questions and I will try to answer them, but time is very limited." Jake found his voice first. "Captain Webb, you said you were from the year 2387, he said. "How is that possible, and how are you talking to us from inside this box?" Webb's voice carried a sadness that made everyone in the room feel uncomfortable. "I am trapped in what we call a temporal stasis field," he explained. My body and consciousness exist in a bubble of slowed time within this container. I was sent back from my era during the final battle against an enemy that threatened to destroy all human life. Lisa stepped closer to the table. What kind of enemy? She asked. What were you fighting that was so dangerous? The box pulsed brighter and Webb's voice became tense. They are called the Devourers, and they are unlike anything humanity has ever faced before. They travel from star system to star system, consuming entire civilizations. They do not just conquer worlds, they completely absorb them, leaving nothing behind but empty space. Ben was recording everything on multiple devices and taking readings with various instruments. Captain Webb, how do these Devourers consume civilizations? He asked. Do they eat people or destroy planets? Webb explained that the Devourers were not physical beings in the way humans understood. They were more like a collective consciousness that fed on the life force and creativity of other species. When they found a populated world, they would surround it with their ships and begin draining away everything that made that civilization unique and alive. They took thousands of worlds before they reached Earth, Webb continued. We tried to fight them with conventional weapons, but nothing worked. They could absorb our technology and turn it against us. Our military was helpless and our colonies fell one by one. Amy was writing notes as fast as she could. How did humanity survive if these creatures were so powerful? She asked. Webb was quiet for a long moment before answering. We created a weapon called the quantum virus, he said finally. It was designed to attack the Devourers' hive mind and disconnect them from each other. The virus worked, but it also created a terrible side effect that we did not anticipate. The box suddenly grew much brighter, and everyone in the room could feel a strange tingling sensation in the air. Ben's computer started making warning sounds, and the lights flickered. The quantum virus did destroy the Devourers, Webb said, but it also began unraveling the fabric of space and time itself. Jake felt a chill run down his spine. What do you mean unraveling? He asked. Webb explained that the virus had been too powerful and had started affecting the quantum structure of reality. Stars began disappearing and entire solar systems winked out of existence as the damage spread. I volunteered to be sent back in time to prevent this catastrophe, Webb said. The plan was to hide the virus in the past where it could not be accidentally triggered. I was supposed to bury this container deep in the ocean where it would never be found. Lisa looked confused. But Jake found it buried in sand on the beach, she said. How did it get there? Webb's voice became worried. Something went wrong with the temporal displacement. I was supposed to arrive in the deep ocean in the year 1950, but the process was disrupted. I do not know exactly when or where I ended up, but if you found me on a beach, then I have been here for decades at least. Ben was studying the readings from his instruments. Captain Webb, the electromagnetic field around this box is incredibly complex, he said. It looks like it is connected to quantum fluctuations that I cannot even measure properly. The voice from the box became urgent. That is the containment field that holds the quantum virus, Webb said. You must understand that this weapon is the most dangerous thing humanity has ever created. It saved us from the Devourers, but it also nearly destroyed everything we were trying to protect. Amy looked up from her notes. Captain Webb, if the virus is so dangerous, why did you bring it back in time? She asked. Why not just destroy it? Webb was quiet for a moment. Because the Devourers are coming, he said finally. My mission was to hide the virus until humanity developed enough wisdom to use it properly. But I fear that time is running out, and you may need this weapon sooner than anyone expected. The box suddenly dimmed, and Webb's voice became weak. Again. I am losing power, he said. The stasis field is unstable, and I cannot maintain communication much longer. You must decide whether to trust me and keep this box sealed or risk everything by opening it. The laboratory fell silent except for the humming of Ben's equipment. Jake looked at Lisa, Amy, and Ben. They all had the same expression of fear and uncertainty on their faces. They had stumbled onto something that was far beyond their understanding, and now they had to decide what to do with it, outside the research. Station the ocean was dark and peaceful. None of them knew that far above them in space something was already beginning to change. The first signs of the approaching threat were too small to detect, but they were there waiting to grow into something. That would test everything Captain Webb had told them about the future of humanity. The team worked through the night studying the box and trying to understand what Captain Webb had told them. Amy spent hours analyzing the symbols while Ben ran tests on the electromagnetic field surrounding the container. Lisa researched everything she could find about temporal physics, and Jake kept detailed notes about their conversations with Webb. None of them got any sleep, but they were too excited and worried to feel tired. At 6 in the morning, Ben's computers started receiving emergency alerts from NASA and other space agencies around the world. The alerts were about gravitational anomalies detected throughout the solar system. Something was causing space itself to bend and twist in ways that scientists had never seen before. The anomalies were small, but they were growing stronger and appearing in more locations every hour. Jake called Webb by touching the box and asked him about the gravitational readings. Webb's voice was weak, but he managed to explain that the Devourers always caused these effects when they approached a star system. Their ships were so massive and their technology so advanced that they warped space around them like black holes. The gravitational anomalies are just the beginning, Webb said. Next, you will detect structured radio signals and then visual confirmation of their scout ships. The main fleet always stays hidden until the scouts report back about the target worlds. Defenses. Amy made a breakthrough while studying the symbols on the box. She discovered that they were not just decorative markings but actually a complex mathematical formula. The symbols described the structure of the quantum virus in precise detail. She realized that the box was not just a container but also a sophisticated computer that could calculate how to deploy the weapon. These symbols are like an instruction manual, Amy explained to the others. They show exactly how the virus works and how it can be controlled. But the mathematics is so advanced that I can only understand small parts of it. Ben was monitoring radio telescopes around the world through his computer connections. At noon, he detected the first structured signals that Webb had predicted. The signals were coming from the outer edge of the solar system near Pluto. They were not random noise, but clearly artificial communications with complex patterns and rhythms. The signals matched the communication patterns that Captain Webb described. Ben said, "Something is definitely out there, and it is trying to talk to other members of its species." Lisa was reading scientific papers about quantum physics and temporal mechanics when she noticed something important. The box responded to human emotions and thoughts in ways that normal technology could not. When someone was angry or frustrated near the box, it glowed brighter. When someone was calm and peaceful, the glow became softer. The container seemed to be connected to human consciousness somehow. Jake was about to call Webb again when 3 black vehicles pulled up outside the research station. Men and women in dark suits got out and walked toward the main entrance. They showed official identification to the security guard and demanded to speak with whoever was in charge of the facility. Agent Kate Murphy was the leader of the group. She was a tall woman with short brown hair and cold eyes that seemed to see everything. She worked for a government agency that dealt with unusual threats to national security. Her team had been tracking the electromagnetic anomalies that the box was producing and had traced them to this location. "We know you have found something that is causing disturbances in the local electromagnetic field," Agent Murphy said when she met with Jake and his team. "We need to examine this object and determine if it poses a threat to public safety." Jake tried to explain that they were still studying the box and did not fully understand what it was. Agent Murphy was not interested in their research. She wanted to take the box to a government facility where it could be properly analyzed by experts with security clearances. "This is not a request," Agent Murphy said. "This is a matter of national security, and we have the authority to confiscate any object that might be dangerous." Amy stepped forward and told Agent Murphy about the symbols and the mathematical formula she had discovered. She explained that the box contained information about advanced technology that could be very valuable to science. Agent Murphy listened, but her expression did not change. "All the more reason for us to study it in a secure location," she said. "You are not equipped to handle something this potentially dangerous." Ben was still monitoring the radio signals. when he detected something new. The signals were getting stronger and more frequent. He also found reports from observatories around the world about unusual objects detected at the edge of the solar system. The objects were very large and appeared to be artificial structures, moving toward Earth. "Agent Murphy, you need to see this," Ben said. He showed her the data from the radio telescopes and the visual observations. "These objects are not natural, and they are heading in our direction." Agent Murphy studied the information, and her calm expression changed to one of concern. She called her superiors on a secure phone and spoke in code words that the research team could not understand. When she finished the call, she looked at Jake and the others with a more serious expression. "We have been monitoring similar reports from other countries," she said. "There appears to be a coordinated approach by unknown objects throughout the solar system. We need to know if your box is connected to these events." Jake touched the box and called for Captain Webb. The voice that answered was stronger than it had been in hours. Webb immediately asked if they had detected the scout ships yet. When Jake told him about the radio signals and visual observations, Webb's voice became urgent. "The scouts have found Earth, and they are reporting back to the main fleet," Webb said. "You have very little time before the Devourers arrive in force. The scout ships are just gathering information about human technology and military capabilities, Agent." Murphy heard Webb's voice and her eyes widened. She had been briefed about unusual phenomena, but nothing had prepared her for a conversation with someone claiming to be from the future. She asked Webb direct questions about the approaching threat, and he answered with detailed information about Devourer tactics and technology. "The main fleet consists of hundreds of massive ships that can absorb energy from stars," Webb explained. "They will surround Earth and begin the consumption process within days of the scouts' return. Your current military technology cannot stop them." Agent Murphy was now convinced that the box contained information vital to Earth's defense. She called her headquarters again and reported that the situation was much more serious than originally thought. Within an hour, military officials from around the world were being briefed about the approaching threat. Jake and his team found themselves at the center of a global crisis. The box that had seemed like an interesting archaeological discovery was now humanity's only source of information about an enemy that could destroy their entire civilization. The weight of responsibility was overwhelming, but they knew they had to help however they could. Webb's voice came from the box one more time before the communication faded. "The quantum virus is the only weapon that can stop the Devourers," he said. "But remember what I told you about the consequences of using it. You must find another way, or humanity will face a fate worse than extinction." Outside the research station, the ocean looked peaceful and normal. But high above in space, the first Devourer scout ships were already crossing the orbit of Neptune. The invasion that Captain Webb had warned about was no longer a story from the future. It was happening right now, and Earth had very little time to prepare for the greatest threat humanity had ever faced. The Devourer scout ships had crossed the orbit of Mars when General Patricia Hayes arrived at the research station. She was a tough woman in her 60s who had spent her entire career in the military. General Hayes had been put in charge of coordinating Earth's defense against the alien threat. World leaders had finally agreed to work together. After seeing the evidence that something was approaching their planet, General Hayes brought with her a team of military scientists and engineers. They set up equipment throughout the research station to monitor the box and study everything Captain Webb had told them about the Devourers. The peaceful laboratory had become a war room where humanity's survival was being planned. Jake and his team were exhausted from working without sleep for 3 days. They had been answering questions and explaining their discoveries to government officials from around the world. Everyone wanted to understand the quantum virus and how it could be used as a weapon. The pressure was enormous, and Jake felt like the weight of the world was on his shoulders. Amy had made more progress translating the symbols on the box. She discovered that the mathematical formula was more complex than she had first thought. The quantum virus was not just a simple weapon, but a sophisticated program that could rewrite the basic laws of physics in a limited area. The virus could theoretically make the Devourer's technology Stop working by changing how atoms and energy behaved around them. Ben was monitoring the approaching scout ships and tracking their movements through space. The alien vessels were unlike anything humans had ever built. They were enormous organic-looking structures that seemed to be alive rather than constructed. The ships moved in patterns that suggested they were controlled by a single intelligence rather than individual pilots. The scouts are scanning our planet with some kind of energy beam, Ben reported to General Hayes. They're gathering information about our cities, our military bases, and our technology. It looks like they are mapping everything for an invasion. Lisa had been studying the box's connection to human consciousness. She discovered that the container responded most strongly to emotions like determination, creativity, and hope. When someone near the box felt angry or afraid, the response was weaker. The box seemed to be designed to work with the best parts of human nature. I think the box is more than just a weapon, Lisa told Jake. It feels like it was built to amplify human qualities rather than replace them. Maybe Captain Webb's people never understood how to use it properly. Captain Webb's voice had been getting stronger as more people gathered around the box. The presence of so many humans with strong emotions seemed to power the stasis field that kept him alive. Webb had been explaining devourer tactics to the military officials, but he always ended his briefings with warnings about the quantum virus. In my timeline, we were so desperate to survive that we did not think about the consequences, Webb said during one of his communications. The virus worked perfectly and destroyed the devourers, but it also changed us. We became something that was no longer truly human. General Hayes asked Webb to explain what he meant by no longer human. Webb's voice became sad as he described how the virus had affected his people. After using the weapon, humans had lost much of their creativity and emotional flexibility. They became more like machines that could think and plan but could not feel wonder or joy or love. We survived, but we lost everything that made survival worthwhile, Webb said. We became efficient and logical, but we stopped being able to dream or hope or imagine new possibilities. The virus saved our bodies, but it killed our souls. The military scientists were frustrated by Webb's warnings. They could see the devourer ships getting closer every day, and they needed a weapon that could stop them. The quantum virus was the only thing that had ever worked against the aliens, and Earth did not have time to develop other options. Captain Webb, we understand the risks, General Hayes said. But if we do not use the virus, then the devourers will destroy us anyway. At least with the virus we have a chance to survive, even if we are changed by it. Webb tried to convince them that there had to be another way. He explained that his people had been in such a hurry to use the virus that they had never explored other possibilities. Maybe humans in this timeline could find a solution that his people had missed. Jake had been listening to these conversations and thinking about everything they had learned. He noticed that the box responded differently to different people. When Amy was excited about solving the mathematical puzzles, the box glowed brighter. When Ben was determined to track the alien ships, the energy field got stronger. When Lisa was hopeful about finding a peaceful solution, the symbols seemed to pulse with warmth. What if we are looking at this wrong? Jake said during one of their planning meetings. What if the box is not just a container for the virus, but something that can work with human consciousness to create new possibilities? General Hayes looked at Jake with interest. What do you mean? She asked. Jake explained his theory that the box might be able to amplify human thoughts and emotions rather than just release a destructive weapon. Captain Webb said the virus was designed to rewrite the laws of physics, Jake said. But what if instead of using it to destroy the devourers, we use it to enhance human abilities? What if we could make every person on Earth smarter and more creative and more determined? Webb's voice came from the box before anyone could respond. That is an interesting idea, he said. My people never considered using the virus to enhance ourselves rather than attack our enemies. But the mathematics would be incredibly complex and the risks would be enormous. Amy looked at the symbols on the box with new understanding. The formula is not just about destroying alien technology, she said. It is about changing the quantum structure of consciousness itself. If we could modify it properly, we might be able to create a network that connects all human minds, Ben was excited by the possibility. A global network of human consciousness could solve problems faster than any computer, he said. Every person would have access to the knowledge and creativity of the entire human race. Lisa was more cautious. But what if connecting all human minds together destroys our individuality, she said. What if we become a hive mind like the Devourers, General? Hayes was studying the latest reports from the scout ships. The aliens had finished their survey of Earth and were beginning to transmit their findings back to the main fleet. Intelligence analysts estimated that the full Devourer invasion would begin within 72 hours. We are running out of time, General Hayes said. We need to make a decision about how to use this weapon. Do we follow Captain Webb's original plan and try to destroy the Devourers directly, or do we try this new approach of enhancing human consciousness? Jake looked at the box sitting on the laboratory table. The symbols were glowing softly, and he could feel the presence of Captain Webb, waiting for their decision. The quantum virus represented both humanity's greatest hope and its greatest danger. Whatever they chose would determine not just whether the human race survived, but what kind of species they would become outside the research station. The ocean was still peaceful, but everyone knew that was about to change. High above them in space, the massive Devourer fleet was approaching. Earth, the aliens had consumed thousands of civilizations and had never been defeated. But they had also never encountered a species quite like humanity. The next few days would test everything that made humans special and determine whether those qualities were strong enough to save them from extinction. The Devourer fleet arrived at Earth exactly when Captain Webb had predicted. The alien ships were massive beyond anything humans had imagined. Each vessel was the size of a small moon, and their surfaces looked like living tissue rather than metal. There were hundreds of them, and they formed a perfect sphere around Earth, blocking out sections of the stars. Jake stood in the research station looking at the data streaming in from observatories around the world. The Devourer ships were not attacking yet, but they were scanning Earth with energy beams that made the air itself glow with strange colors. The scanning process was the first step in what Webb had called the consumption process. General Hayes had made the decision to try Jake's plan instead of using the quantum virus as a weapon. The risk was enormous, but she agreed that humanity needed to try something the Devourers had never encountered before. Military bases around the world were coordinating with the research station to implement the consciousness network Amy had worked for. 18 hours straight modifying the mathematical formula in the box's symbols. Instead of programming the virus to destroy alien technology, she was changing it to enhance human mental connections. The mathematics were incredibly complex, and she had to guess at parts of the formula that she did not fully understand. I think I have it right, Amy said as she made the final adjustments. The virus will create quantum links between human brains without destroying individual personalities. Each person will still be themselves, but they will have access to the thoughts and knowledge of everyone else in the network. Ben had been setting up transmission equipment to broadcast the virus signal globally. The plan was to use every radio, tower, satellite, and internet connection on Earth to spread the consciousness enhancement to every human being at the same time. The technical challenges were enormous, but Ben was confident the system would work. We have connections to every major city and most rural areas, Ben reported. The signal will reach about 98% of the human population within the first minute. The remaining 2% should be connected within 10 minutes. Lisa was monitoring the psychological effects of the network on the research team. They had decided to test the system on themselves first to make sure it was safe. When Amy activated the consciousness link, Lisa felt her mind suddenly expand in ways she had never experienced. She could feel the thoughts and emotions of Jake, Amy, Ben, and Captain Webb all at the same time. But instead of being overwhelmed, she felt more like herself than ever before. The other minds in the network supported and strengthened her own thoughts rather than replacing them. It is working perfectly, Lisa said with wonder in her voice. I can feel all of you, but I am still me. It is like having the best parts of everyone's mind available to help with any problem. Jake, experienced the network connection as a warm feeling of belonging and strength. He could sense Amy's love of mathematics, Ben's excitement about technology, Lisa's deep curiosity about the natural world, and Webb's determination to protect humanity. All of these qualities combined with his own thoughts to create something much more powerful than any individual mind. Captain Webb's voice came from the box, but now it seemed to come from inside Jake's head as well. "This is incredible," Webb said. "I can feel the consciousness of people all over your planet connecting to the network. The quantum field is growing stronger with each new person who joins. General Hayes activated the global transmission and the quantum virus spread across Earth in minutes." In Tokyo, a scientist solving a complex equation suddenly had access to the mathematical insights of researchers in Berlin. In São Paulo, an artist creating a sculpture was inspired by the dreams of children in Moscow. In London, a military strategist planning Earth's defense could feel the determination of every soldier on the planet. The effect was immediate and profound. Humans around the world began working together with coordination that seemed impossible. Language barriers disappeared as people could share thoughts and feelings directly. Cultural differences became strengths. As each group contributed their unique perspectives to the global consciousness, the Devourers noticed the change immediately. Their ships stopped scanning and began moving into attack formation. The aliens had never encountered a species that could transform itself so rapidly and completely. They had expected to face a primitive civilization with individual minds that could be easily overwhelmed. Instead, they found a planet where every human being was connected to the collective intelligence and creativity of their entire species. When Devourer ships attacked military bases, the defenders fought with strategies that combined the knowledge of every general on Earth. When the aliens tried to disrupt communication systems, human technicians repaired them using techniques that no single person could have discovered alone. The first major battle took place above the Pacific Ocean, where a group of Devourer ships attempted to land on Earth. Human aircraft rose to meet them, but these were not ordinary pilots. Each person flying those planes had access to the flying skills of every pilot who had ever lived. They performed maneuvers that should have been impossible and fought with a coordination that amazed even themselves. The Devourers had technology that was far superior to anything humans possessed. Their energy weapons could destroy entire cities, and their defensive shields could block any attack. But they could not understand or predict the behavior of an enemy that thought and acted as a single unified mind while maintaining individual creativity and determination. In New York City, a group of engineers working on defensive systems suddenly realized they could combine the artistic vision of painters with the mathematical precision of scientists to create energy shields that worked like living things. The shields adapted and changed in response to Devourer attacks instead of simply blocking them. In Sydney, a team of doctors connected to the global network discovered they could heal injuries by sharing the body's natural healing processes across multiple people. Wounded soldiers recovered in minutes instead of weeks, because their bodies were supported by the biological knowledge of every medical professional on Earth. The Devourers tried to use their most powerful weapon, which was a device that could drain the life force from entire planets. But when they activated it against Earth, they found that human life force was no longer contained in individual bodies. The network allowed people to share their life energy so that everyone became stronger instead of weaker. Captain Webb watched the battle through the consciousness network with amazement. "This is nothing like what happened in my timeline," he said. "You have found a way to become more than human without losing your humanity. The Devourers have never faced anything like this before." The alien ships that had seemed so terrifying began to retreat from Earth's atmosphere. For the first time in their existence, the Devourers had encountered a species that grew stronger when threatened instead of weaker. The quantum network had given humanity something that no amount of technology could provide, which was the power to think and act as one people while celebrating what made each person unique. The battle was not over, but for the first time since the invasion began, humans felt hope instead of fear. They had discovered that their greatest strength was not any weapon or technology, but their ability to work together while remaining individuals. The Devourers might be more advanced, but they had never learned to combine unity with creativity the way humans had just done. The Devourer fleet hung in space around Earth for 3 days trying to understand what had happened to humanity. Their ships ran constant scans and sent probe after probe to study the quantum network that connected every human mind. The aliens had consumed thousands of civilizations, but they had never encountered anything like this. Transformation. Jake stood on the observation deck of the research station watching the alien ships through a telescope. Through the consciousness network, he could feel the thoughts and emotions of 7 billion people all focused on the same goal of defending their world. The feeling was overwhelming and beautiful at the same time. The Devourers made one final attempt to break through Earth's defenses. They sent their most powerful ships to attack major cities simultaneously, hoping to overwhelm the human response. But the network allowed people to coordinate their actions with perfect timing and complete understanding of what everyone else was doing. In London, children playing in schoolyards suddenly started drawing pictures that contained the mathematical formulas needed to improve the city's energy shields. The children did not understand the mathematics, but they were connected to scientists and engineers who could translate their artistic vision into practical technology. In Moscow, dancers performing in theaters began moving in patterns that showed military strategists how to coordinate defensive maneuvers. The dancers were expressing the collective wisdom of every person on Earth through their art and movement. In Cairo, farmers working in fields noticed that their crops were growing in formations that resembled circuit diagrams. When engineers studied these patterns, they discovered new ways to build communication systems that could not be disrupted by alien technology. The Devourers attacked with weapons that had destroyed entire star systems, but Earth's defenders responded with creativity and determination that seemed to come from nowhere and everywhere at once. Human technology was still primitive compared to alien science, but it was being guided by the combined intelligence of an entire species. The battle lasted for 6 hours, and when it was over, the Devourer fleet was retreating toward the outer edge of the solar system. For the first time in their existence, the aliens had been defeated not by superior weapons, but by something they could not understand or General Hayes contacted Jake through the network and told him that governments around the world wanted to declare victory. But Jake felt through the collective consciousness that the Devourers were not truly defeated. They were confused and frightened, but they were also learning from what had happened. "The aliens will be back," Jake said to his team. "They are studying us right now and trying to figure out how to counter the network. We need to be ready for their return." Captain Webb's voice came through the quantum connection much stronger than it had ever been before. The consciousness network had somehow stabilized his stasis field and given him access to the thoughts and memories of people all over Earth. "Jake is right," Webb said. "The Devourers always return to finish what they started. But they have never faced a species that can adapt and change as quickly as you have. You have time to prepare, and you have something my people never had." Amy asked Webb what he meant, and his answer surprised everyone connected to the network. "You have hope," Webb said. "My people were so afraid of losing our humanity that we never explored what we could become. You have embraced change while holding on to what makes you special." The team decided that Jake should open the box and free Captain Webb from his temporal prison. The quantum virus had served its purpose by creating the consciousness network, and Webb deserved to experience the world that humanity had built with his help. Jake carefully touched the symbols on the box in the sequence that Amy had discovered. The container opened with a soft hiss, and light poured out, filling the entire laboratory. Captain Webb materialized slowly as the stasis field released him from his prison in time. Webb was a tall man with gray hair and tired eyes that had seen too much suffering. He looked around the laboratory with wonder and then smiled for the first time in centuries. Through the network, he could feel the hopes and dreams of billions of people, and it was more beautiful than anything he had ever experienced. "This is incredible," Webb said as he felt the full power of the consciousness network. "You have created something that my people never imagined." You are still human, but you are also something more, Lisa showed Webb how the network allowed people to share knowledge and creativity while maintaining their individual personalities. Scientists in Antarctica could collaborate with artists in Africa to solve problems that neither group could handle alone. The network made everyone stronger without making them the same. Ben demonstrated how children around the world were using the network to learn and play in ways that were preparing them for challenges that adults could not even imagine. The children were growing up connected to each other and to the wisdom of their entire species. The Devourers returned 6 months later with a much larger fleet and new weapons designed to disrupt the quantum network. But humanity had used that time to grow and adapt in ways that surprised even themselves. The network had evolved beyond what Jake and his team had originally created. People began manifesting abilities that seemed impossible. Some could predict Devourer movements by sensing disturbances in space and time. Others could communicate directly with the alien ships and understand their technology. Children born after the network was established could manipulate matter at the quantum level simply by thinking about it. The second battle lasted only minutes. The Devourers found that their new weapons were useless against an enemy that could change and adapt faster than they could adjust their tactics. Humans had become something that the aliens could not consume or understand. The Devourer fleet departed Earth's solar system and never returned. Other alien races who had heard about the defeat began sending peaceful messages to Earth. Humanity had become known throughout the galaxy as the species that had found a way to grow beyond their limitations, while remaining true to their nature. Jake and his team continued their research, but now they were studying the network they had created and helping humanity explore its new capabilities. Captain Webb joined them as a bridge between the past and the future. He had warned them about the dangers of the quantum virus, but they had found a way to use it that had never occurred to his people. The consciousness network continued to evolve and expand. Within a generation, humans were building cities that existed in multiple dimensions and creating art that could only be perceived by minds connected to the quantum field. They were exploring the galaxy not as conquerors, but as curious children eager to learn about the universe, the box that had started. Everything sat in the laboratory as a reminder of the choice humanity had made. They had been offered the power to destroy their enemies, but had chosen instead to transform themselves. They had kept their humanity while transcending the limitations that had once seemed impossible to overcome. Jake often stood by the box and remembered the day he had found it buried in the sand. He had been looking for artifacts from the past, but had discovered the key to humanity's future. The voice that had whispered from within the container had been asking them not to open it, but humanity had found a way to unlock its secrets without losing their souls. The network had given them something that no weapon could provide, which was the ability to face any challenge while remaining essentially human. They had proven that growth and change did not require the destruction of what made them special. They had found a way to become more than they were while celebrating everything. They had always been